or ahead of time, before you get into a relationship, you will default to accepting what happens to you in a lot of situations without having the impartial ability to evaluate it and say, this isn't right. You know, like if you're 14 and you've just always been treated a certain way in a relationship and you've come to accept, oh, that's just the way I should be treated, that can do a real number on you. And if you're not strong enough yet as a person, when you're 14, you haven't fully formed your goals, you haven't fully formed your values, you haven't articulated for yourself what you stand for as an adult, a contributing member of society, then you're too prone to just accepting what given to you. You need to be able to formulate that yourself first.
Yeah. So I guess it's a good time to share my story of how I used to, okay, so when a lot of friends of ours have heard this story. Before Liz and I were even dating, I had this idea of what kind of father, or how I would act the first time any of our daughters brought a boy home, brought a guy home after, brought a guy home from a date or whatever, right? So first of all, they would have to go through the side door. The first time that they come over, they'd have to go through the side door, right? And in the house that we live in now, they'd have to actually come in through the garage door, right? So, and what I would do is I would have from the side door, in the garage, I would have a little condo-sized couch. Now, if you don't know what that means, a condo-sized couch is about 3/4 the size of a regular couch. And I would saw about 1 inch have a 1 inch differential between the back legs and the front legs, so that when they sat on the couch, they would kind of be like leaning forward a little, and
just slightly uncomfortable.
On the wall opposite of the couch, I would have on the wall my samurai sword with my track lighting just shining right on the blade of the sword, and so like just accentuating the sharpness of the sword. And then right underneath the sword, I would have my big wingback chair, and I would walk in with our Irish wolfhounds, and right. And then if they ever made it to dinner, then we would serve chicken, and I would say, so Joe, do you prefer leg or breast? And if they didn't say wing, they were out of there, right? So not coming back, right? I like to tell this story actually sitting beside Liz, because she'll roll her eyes at the appropriate moments. So in that way, I've mellowed out. I eat a lot more fiber now. I make sure that I drink a lot of water, and everything's all,
He's a little more mellow.
Yeah, a little bit more mellow, right? So, so anyway, that was what I used to think, right?
That was a plan.
That was the plan.
Still
might be the plan. So you never know.
You never know. There might be one or two that go through that.
Yeah, you never know, right?
We'll see.
But I did want to talk about when you are to talk about it with your kids, right? That's the most important thing, right? Because a lot of times when you're parenting, things just kind of blindside you, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, and you kind of just let it go. But you really need to talk about these things with your kids. We've learned that our values transfer by what they see, yes, but they don't necessarily learn from osmosis. Our kids are also not mind readers either. Yeah. So
you need to give them the rationale.
You need to let them know that, no, this is not just something that, we're just being, dictators about this. There is, a sound logic and sound research and sound reasoning about why you you think this way.
And you can actually start talking to them about it before they're adolescents.
And this actually is better.
Before it's an issue. One of the things that has been learned by researchers over the past 10, 20 years or so is they used to believe that the adolescent brain was, they used to believe that the human brain was finished development by around age 7. So that, the brain cells are proliferating, everything is growing, there's massive growth in the brain, and then as your lifestyle and your habits take effect, your brain starts to prune back and only use the pathways that are being used the most. So it will trim back areas that aren't being used. What they've found is that that actually happens again in adolescence. So there's another, once the surge of hormones that that produces puberty is happening, once that surge of hormones is happening, the brain proliferates again. So there's again massive growth in the brain, and it goes through another stage of trimming back and weeding out what it's not using. And one of the things that it also goes through in that process is, for a time, they actually lose some of their ability to perceive consequences. So you have to actually go through with them and get them to think about, okay, so if you're in this situation, what's the right thing to do? And draw them through that decision-making process, model it for them, help them practice it, so that they're not just suddenly in a situation and they don't know what to do, so they default to the adrenaline that's coursing through their system and what is. So you've got to give them those tools, those resources of the practice at the decision making, and then let them, I think by the time they're around 18, 19,
once that
that starts to be more concretely formulated for them.
So
risk assessment, that's what it is. They don't naturally do risk assessment.
Book recommendations. The Primal Teen, and I can't remember who the author is, and I meant to pull it out. We have it somewhere here in our bookshelf here.
Strouk.
But anyway, we'll look it up, and we'll let you guys know. But The Primal Teen, that is a great book to read. It goes through all sorts of really cool things. Actually, one of the things that I thought was interesting about it was was it just for boys, or was it for both boys and girls? Just the facial, just their facial expressions. You might say something, and then their facial expression just going to be like, like they're just unaware of their facial expressions, and what their face might be saying is not what they're thinking, and not what and not what they're receiving. So that's a huge thing, right? So that's a that's a huge thing when it comes to parent-teen communications. But other books that would be really good for you as parents. We've talked about The Temperament God Gave You, but this one here is The Temperament God Gave Your Kids, right? So this one is also a really good book to read. Also, too, is the Temperament God Gave Your Spouse, right? So The Temperament God Gave Your Spouse. So these are really cool, good resources. If you haven't read The Temperament God Gave You, and we've talked about that one before, read that one first. We highly recommend to read that one first.
And have your teens read it.
Have your teens read it. We've lent ours out a few times, and we're actually going to buy more copies of it. We're just going to buy more. But it's
also a really good resource for family discussions.
That's right.
Because we'll have talks with our kids about, anyone who we happen to encounter, and, they may or may not be, enamored of people, or
and then we can tell them
ticked off at people, and then we can talk about how the dynamics play out. So what temperament do you think they are? And how do you think that person needs to be communicated with so that it's effective? Right, so it's
exactly.
a lot of fun.
It totally is a lot of fun. So, especially when you have one who is choleric melancholic, and you call them melancholic choleric. That's kind of fun.
That's fun.
And she's right there smirking right now because she's grinding her teeth. She just got her braces off, so it's kind of, you know, so, but yeah, she's grinding those teeth. But another book that was really good that I wanted to talk about, or just, you know, show everybody, is it's The 5 Love Languages, Gary Chapman. So some of you know, some people may have heard this one. This one was pretty cool because it talked about the different behaviors people do to express affection. And so your natural way of expressing affection may not actually be your partner's way of receiving affection. You know, they might be, you know, okay, yeah, great, thanks. You know, so for, you know, words of affirmation, you know, like words of affirmation, you know, some people, you know, great job goes a really, really long way. And some people say, yeah, okay, thanks. You know, and it's not really a big deal. But if your love language is expressing words of affirmation, you know, and somebody, you know, is kind of like, oh, yeah, okay, there could
somebody
be
else's love language is acts of service. And you're just, if your love language is words of affirmation and their love language is acts of service, you can be saying all the really nice things in the world to them, and they think, well, that's all talk, but I'm not seeing any action.
Yeah, so that's,
show me,
you know,
show me.
Yeah, right.
Do something nice for me.
Right.
Yeah.
That might exactly be, you know, what they're waiting for. Right. So, all right. Anyway, we can talk about that. Yeah, another time. But it's
yeah, and it's a great book. It's not quite as useful, I find, as the temperament God gave you.
It's not. It's not. So the temperament God gave you,
hands down.
Yeah, first, right? And hopefully in the next couple of weeks, when we're on air, we'll actually show you the title of that book. Like, we'll actually show you that book in our hand, right? Because you know, we'll actually have it in our hand again, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Let us know what you think. Random 10